I think we're live.
Are we live?
I just got the notification. Rosa Cooling is live on
What?
I almost said TikTok for some reason. YouTube.
We're what?
We're live.
Oh my
How did
goodness!
this happen? And then I fell out of the chair.
How did we do this again? How do we keep doing this?
Oh my god! I wonder. The magic.
Magic of going live.
Where's my headset?
Oh gosh.
I'm trying to find my headset so I can hear the stream on my phone so I can see if everything sounds good. I don't remember.
Welcome, chat. You spelled For the Forgotten Ones wrong.
I did? You're lying. I checked. For the
Wait, maybe. Hold on.
No, I didn't, because it has 2 T's.
No. Okay, I mislooked.
Oh my god, don't do that to me, Rosa. I'm so proud.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud. Oh! Hold on. Let me edit the description so I can put the fic link in it.
Oh, smart. I knew I was
So Buddy does, come for us.
I just fucking stepped on a nail in my room.
Oh.
I don't even remember what I was looking for. I was looking for something. Who knows? Let me wipe my glasses. Oh, I know what I was looking for. I was looking for my glasses. What?
Here, wait.
Where did I put it?
For the Forgotten Ones. I can't read chat just yet. But, yeah. Give me 1 second.
Glasses wipe.
No. Why are you giggling?
I'm looking for something and I can't find it, so I'm like giggle panicking.
This is so horrible timing.
I know. I can't find my wipe for my glasses. My cloth.
Oh, I should probably wipe my glasses too.
And they're dirty. I don't know why they're so dirty, but they are. I'm gonna cry. That's it, I'm ending stream.
No! We just got that up! It looks so cool too!
It looks so good. I'm actually gonna get
I know.
I can't find it.
I'm so excited to show it to chat, like the new overlays and stuff.
Yeah. And maybe one day we can get it working with like little like PNG when they bounce.
Oh, I know.
I know how to do it too. I'm too lazy to do it right now. It's too much work.
Why is the description not letting me put the link in? I guess. Jesus. It sounds like you want the stream to end.
No. I don't. I'm joking.
You
I don't know why I mentioned it twice now, though. My bad. I don't want it to end.
Well, I'll probably... Okay, wait. I might have to put the link in chat and then, like, pin it, because for some reason it's not letting me in the description yet. I can probably do that after the stream.
Yes, I found it.
Oh, I spelled fic wrong. Ignore that, guys.
Fix link. Y'all go get your fix.
Go get your fix.
Go get your fix in the form of an AO3 fanfiction.
Yes. Welcome to the stream, guys. Beetle, you could end your Discord stream so it doesn't overload the computer.
Yes. You are so smart.
I am. I'm a genius.
How do I...
How's everyone doing tonight? You're gonna get a bedtime story tonight. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing well. And then everyone's on the edge of their seats not saying anything.
Everyone's so excited. Look at how excited everyone is, Rosa.
I know.
Sarcasm.
Everybody's just so pumped. They can't wait.
They're absolutely just flashbang myself with my own screen.
So today, to do a little introduction, for those who might not know what the Forgotten Ones is or why we're doing this, I posted on my community tab talking about how I'm working on a FTFO like commentary video. That video is turning out to be like more than 2 hours long. So I thought maybe it would also be fun so I can stay like into the whole entire project if we read it out loud to everybody. This is going to be a little bit of a live stream series. So it's something easy that we can do, but also something that, since we do like late night streams, we thought maybe, reading a little bedtime story would be a good idea.
It could be just like morning for someone somewhere right now, or else you're like, oh, we're reading bedtime stories. I just woke up.
I'm so sorry. I have water here. I have chapstick, which, Beetle, I know you just have your Arizona, but your throat's gonna die. You don't forget how long these chapters are.
I have not forgotten how long these chapters are. It tries.
I will also say my acting is subpar. I'm not a voice actor. I could only get one of my VAs in here.
Not even the good one either. You just
stop it. Noel couldn't join us, even though they're such a big FTFO fan. But the next one, they do plan to be there. So if you really like to hear Noel, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna break it to y'all. Has never read this fanfiction. He's not really a bookworm kind of guy. So he's not really gonna be joining us unless we force him to voice Killer, which I wouldn't really put it past us.
Yeah, I really can't hear Killer as anyone but KJ now.
Me too.
Like, anytime I read anything with Killer, it's like with his voice, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I know, and then I also can't simp for Killer anymore because I'm like, oh, it's KJ.
I haven't ever, like, simped for him, though. I've never been a Killer simp. Like, I love Killer, but honestly, Killer is, like, more me for real than a simpable character.
So, some trigger warnings for this fanfiction. I have it written down already, so I can, like, just pull it up and read the simple trigger warning before we get into it. There's going to be violence, description of injury, murder, blood, the Gain and Ink's backstories, which can get really heavy and dark. There's minor character death, passive suicidal ideation, phobias, panic attacks, emotional manipulation, body horror, and all that type of stuff.
All the great things.
So, yeah, all the great things. I'm gonna run a lot of that until, like, later on in the fic, but the first couple chapters do have a bit of the not aliving idolation, so do keep that in mind. The main concept that I'm gonna read a description of FTFO right now. You don't need to pull it up yet, Beetle.
I'm not.
Basically, before Ink can destroy his soul and enter the Doodle Sphere, he gets recruited by Nightmare. And he accepts his role as best he can, even if he sometimes feels like he's meant for something more. So, you know, it's exploring that concept of Ink never really having to rip apart his soul. And also joining the Bad Sansas. It's also completely platonic. There's no ships in this.
Yeah.
So anybody can consume this and enjoy this. There's not going to be any, like, ship wars, because there is none. And I can't lie, me and Beetle might make some comments about them being gay.
I mean, they are,
no,
but, like...
read
it. Only a little bit.
Only a little bit. But I will say most of them have brotherly bonds, so do keep that in mind when consuming the fic. Beetle, do you want to do the honors of switching the tab?
No, Rosa, you!
Oh yeah, let me just do that real quick.
There was no fade in, no nothing. We just went straight to the scene. I forgot to add it.
Really? I can't see it yet on the live stream, so I haven't seen, like, the abrupt switch.
It just like flashed into reality.
Are you sure it did that? Oh, okay, there we go. I saw it.
Yes.
Here we go. I'm really excited. Okay, so, Beetle, I'm probably going to read the first chapter. And then how we're probably going to do it is we're going to swap chapters so we don't, like, lose our voice quicker. Because, shockingly, guys, I'm not the best at reading, like, out loud for very long periods of time. Especially if there's acting required. So...
You know what, Rosa? Me too. We could struggle together through this, and chat could watch us and laugh.
Yeah. We're not gonna obviously read the whole entire fanfic. We might only get to like 5 chapters before our voice dies. But, you know, it's the start of a series, and if you get really interested in the live reading, then you can go read it yourself or wait for the next one. And it'll be really fun next time that can do different voices and stuff. I think that'll be really fun. Okay. Getting started. Chapter 1. A Beacon of Despair. He had no name. Neither did his world. He was a concept, an idea, a sketch, a drawing in an empty white void. He was forgotten, abandoned, alone in his unfinished world. Hey, that's the title. He had a soul. He wished he didn't. If he did not have a soul or feelings, he would be like the others. He would be empty, apathetic, uncaring. He would not think about the endless white that was broken only by the empty shells of unfinished people. The unfinished sketch that was his brother tried to speak to him. He knew his brother at least tried. If he listened hard enough, he could almost hear him. But it was not enough. The loneliness grew. The sadness became anger, and that anger became despair. The despair grew and grew in his soul, so painful and sharp he screamed. But nobody heard him. Nobody helped. Nobody came. There was no such thing as time in the whiteness. There were no hours, days, months, or years. Time simply marched forward. It passed until he could not take it anymore. Again, he cried. Again, he screamed to the apathetic, and the empty, and the whiteness that did not care. It did not matter that no one heard or cared. He screamed to show himself that he existed. I just want to be someone. He grabbed at his chest and summoned his soul. His fingers dug in, and he cried in pain and sorrow. He did not know what would happen when he destroyed his own soul. He only knew he could not take the emptiness anymore. He could not take these feelings anymore. He wanted the pain to end. He wanted this existence to end. He wanted himself to end, one way or the other. He hated the thought of destroying anything, but he would perform this one act of destruction to make the pain stop. Also, if you guys ask me any questions when I'm reading, I will not be able to read them until after I'm reading them. Just to keep that in mind. So I'll always read after each chapter, just to let y'all know. Black tendrils wrapped around his hands and held them in place. The sight of them startled him so thoroughly he stopped moving at all. The tendrils were cold, colder than the whiteness and the loneliness, colder than the despair that drove him to destroy his own soul. He looked up and someone was there. They were taller than him, bigger, and scarier. Most would be stricken by terror at the sight of the corrupted monster in front of them, but not the nameless monster. For the first time in his existence, he saw a color. Cyan. He saw color and felt pure joy. The dark monster hissed in pain but did not release him. The cold cyan eyelight flicked from his soul to his face and he tipped his head. The movement was more curious than mocking. Interesting. Most feel pain when I touch them. That or they die. Why not you? The nameless one was too shocked to see someone else and hear their voice to use his own. He pulled his fingers from his soul and wrapped them around the tendrils. Tentacles? They were surprisingly soft to the touch. The monster with the bright cyan eye seemed almost amused by his curiosity. Do you know who I am? When the nameless one shook his head, he gave a huff. I'm not surprised. I am Nightmare, the guardian of negativity. Your despair drew me here. The nameless one touched his soul and felt a twinge of pain. He looked down at it to see several cracks where his fingers had dug into it. It was damaged but not destroyed. What once would have been freedom from his hellish existence now made him shiver in despair over what he had almost done. A shudder passed through him so fiercely that his bones rattled. Nightmare relaxed, and the hints of pain left his goop-covered face. The nameless one put together what the title of Guardian of Negativity might mean, and shuddered again. He fell onto his knees and clung to the hem of Nightmare's shirt. The shirt was icy cold to the touch, but it was nothing compared to the chilling despair that drove him to want death. The Nameless One only knew the empty expanse of his world, but he was not completely ignorant. He knew what emotions were. He knew something existed outside of it, and he suspected Nightmare would leave him behind in order to feed off his continued suffering. "Please don't leave me," he begged. "Please." The smile Nightmare gave him was nothing short of malicious. "Why shouldn't I? What benefit is there for me to not leave you to suffer and rot?" The fear and despair came on so quickly that the Nameless One couldn't breathe. He curled in on himself, too terrified to even make gasping sounds as his bones shuddered and rattled. Nightmare's mocking grin vanished. If the Nameless One's vision had not been blurred by tears, he might notice that the Guardian and negativity looked uncomfortable. A cold hand rested atop the Nameless One's head, petting him in a mockingly gently manner, and he basked in the contact despite himself. Nightmare crouched in front of him and smirked. His cyan eye light glittered. "Luckily for you, you're interesting. Not just anyone can survive my touch, and you can't give me more negativity if you're dead. So how about we strike a deal? I'll bring you with me out of here, and in exchange you work for me. My gang could always use another member to bring negativity to the multiverse." The Nameless One surprised even himself when he hesitated. It was an offer he never thought he could have. He should jump at the opportunity to get out, but he couldn't. He had been abandoned long ago, but he had a soul. He had feelings. He had a personality. He had gained some aspects of self, be it due to an innate nature or because of his environment. No matter the source, the Nameless One could not accept the idea of hurting others. That core piece of him refused. He lowered his head and watched his tears drip onto his femurs. "I can't destroy or hurt people. I can't." Nightmare's hand did not leave his head. His cold and calculating cyan eyelight raked over him as though it was studying everything that made him him. It must be a pathetic distance to observe. That thought crushed his already broken spirit, and he scratched at his soul. Nightmare grabbed his hands with his tentacles and pulled them away from his chest. His smirk was wide and ominous. Fuck.
Close enough.
This is where you're gonna see the dyslexia hit, chat.
Real.
If I mispronounce words, you can't say anything. I'm dyslexic.
You got two dyslexic bitches in the chat.
Yeah.
Reading bedtime stories.
It grew wider as he felt the Nameless One's spike of fear. "Then I won't make you. Letting you die would be a waste of negativity. Join me, and I'll find a use for you." The Nameless One suspected that if he was not going to be forced to bring suffering to others, then he would become the one that suffered. He accepted that fate, because anything was better than the empty whiteness of his abandoned world. "Okay." Nightmare studied him and his emotions and his soul. He smiled and lifted his empty hand. His tentacles tore through the unfinished sketch that was his brother. His brother had no soul or feelings, and felt nothing as he was destroyed, not even relief. The Nameless One felt for him. Wrapped in Nightmare's tentacles, he quietly wept for the brother that could not be there for him. The remaining sketches were not formed enough to react in any way at all, as the black tentacles destroyed them too. Now the empty white truly was white, and empty, except for the Nameless One and Nightmare. The Nameless One got the message that Nightmare sent. He had no use for the useless, and if the Nameless One proved himself to be useless, he would end up back here without even the unfinished sketches for company. Nightmare held on to him as he cried for the brother that tried to be there for him, but could not due to its nature. It was not a hold of comfort, but one of power to show him who was in control. It was only when he ran out of tears that Nightmare let go of him and summoned a portal. Through it, the Nameless One saw so many colors that he only knew about through impressions left by the one who abandoned this world. Blue, gray, green, black. Black was the most familiar of them, but it was so much better than white. The Nameless One still loved cyan the most. Nightmare stepped through the portal and stood on the other side. The Nameless One felt another jolt of fear that he would close the portal in his face. The Guardian of Negativity's cyan eyelight shone with vicious amusement. "Come on before I change my mind." The Nameless One dove through the portal and landed on green. The air moved and tickled at his bones as it passed. He stopped in place and stared at the green stuff under his feet. It was soft and a little prickly. He wiggled his foot back and forth and enjoyed the sensation. Nightmare glared at him. Stop playing in the grass. The portal was open behind him. One shove and the Nameless One would be back where he came from. The fear returned in earnest. Nightmare settled, satisfied. This way. Let's get you some clothes and introduce yourself to the others. What's your name? The Nameless One kept his head down and studied his feet, and the nice green grass. The despair gripped his soul again, and he let it because it would make Nightmare pleased. I don't have one. Of course you don't, Nightmare muttered. The Nameless One desperately hoped he was not already regretting his decision to let him out of his empty world. He followed Nightmare up a gray line thing with little individual gray square shapes that led to a house. Yes, this must be a house. He did not have anything to compare it to, but this was a building, and it had walls and a roof, so it must be a house. He had never seen a house before. He wanted to touch the hard-looking black square things that made up the house, but he did not want Nightmare to feel any happiness he experienced from touching the house. The house was black, and the grass was green, and the sky was a dark blue, and there were little lights in it. The Nameless One tried not to feel happy to see all these colors. It was so beautiful he started to cry again. Nightmare looked back at him as he opened the swinging thing on the front of the house. What was the word? A door? Crying again? You're pathetic. He almost sounded pleased by that, so the Nameless One nodded in agreement. He was okay with being pathetic, as long as he was not useless. If he was useless, that meant there was no reason to keep him around, and Nightmare would send him back to the white, empty world. He suspected that fear of abandonment he felt would be a constant. He hoped it would be a constant, so Nightmare could find some use in his presence, even if he was pathetic. They entered the big stone house. Nightmare led him through a big room, with a big staircase, and down a thin, long room. Ah, a hall was what it was. To another room. There were so many rooms, and a lot were big. None were as big as the empty whiteness, though, and they all had colors. Mostly black, gray, cyan, and blue, but the Nameless One loved them all so much. What an ugly fucking color pattern, Nightmare. God damn. Gray, cyan, black, and blue.
It could work. It could work. You don't know like the saturations or the specific tones. Like you never know, Rosa. You never know.
The specific tones? Okay.
Listen.
He wanted to feel the gray stones and the cyan lights and the blue stuff on. Oh, the lights were cyan. Ew. And
that's
the blue
interesting. It's interesting.
I don't know. And the blue stuff on the furniture that might be a bed. But Nightmare was frowning again, reigniting his fear. Nightmare looked at him and did a double take. Where did you get that spot from? You didn't have that before. The Nameless One did not understand. Nightmare grabbed his arm and yanked him over to a smooth surface that reflected the appearance of the room. The Nameless One looked in the mirror. On his right cheek was a black splotch. He had never seen himself before, but if Nightmare said he had gained a black splotch, then he must have. He touched the splotch and smiled when it did not come off. He liked that the black mark covered some of the white of his bones. Nightmare went to a small room off the side of the big room and threw something at him. He did not expect it, so it hit him in the face. Whatever it was, felt so soft. He recognized clothes because the empty that was meant to become his brother had part of a scarf. He wanted a scarf. Put that on, Nightmare commanded. The Nameless One obeyed. Clothes were a simple brown long-sleeve shirt and loose pants, but he loved them so very much. He never had clothes before, and these ones covered a lot of the white of his bones. Nightmare had given him something to cover his white with color. He would do his best to be useful somehow and return the favor. Nightmare was leaving. Come on. The Nameless One hastily followed him out. The stone was nice and cool beneath his bare feet. He tried not to enjoy the sensation too much. Do you have any skills? Nightmare asked as they walked. The Nameless One shook his head. Do you know your magic? Again, he shook his head. His dread increased. Nightmare scowled. Do you know anything? This is a house, the Nameless One said quickly, eager to show he had some use. His fear crawled up his spine when Nightmare's scowl deepened. This is a castle. Stars, you really are pathetic. Nightmare rubbed his forehead irritably. No matter. Guess we'll have to teach you the basics, since Cross isn't here right now. He's the only imbecile with any patience. Killer would become too annoyed and kill you. The Nameless One nodded agreeably. It made sense that someone named Killer would kill. Horror will teach you to cook and clean. That will be your job until I figure out what other use you have. You will refer to me as boss or king, not Nightmare. Understand? The Nameless One kept nodding. Don't cause trouble or you will regret it. Nightmare's tentacle flicked. Boss's tentacle flicked. Could he call him Nightmare in his head, or was that not allowed? He did not want to ask in case Nightmare became annoyed and sent him back to that empty whiteness. But don't let the others walk all over you either. You're no use to me dead. The Nameless One hesitated, but nodded again. He was not sure why the others would walk on him, but if Nightmare commanded him to not let it happen, he would do his best to prevent it, even if he did not know how and suspected he would be unable to fight back much. They entered a room that was even bigger than the one with the reflected surface. There were 3 skeletons like him. He wondered if Nightmare was also a skeleton under all that black goop. He knew other types of monsters existed, and had seen them in the outlines of the unfinished empty sketches, but it felt like Nightmare was not one of those types. 2 of the skeletons were fighting. The one with their hood up chased the other with black streaks down his cheeks, shouting something about him insulting Papyrus. The one with black streaks cackled and jeered. As the Nameless One watched, a knife appeared in his hand. Was that magic? The 3rd skeleton had a hole in his skull. He watched the chase with a bored expression. Nightmare did not look bored. He seemed irritated. Killer, Dust, stop this at once. The one with the hood stopped like he had been commanded, but the one with black streaks did not. He turned towards Nightmare and the Nameless One, and his face lit up with ominous glee. Hey, boss! I didn't know we earned a treat. Because it looks like you brought us some free EXP. The skeleton sauntered forward with his... The Nameless One subconsciously stepped back and hid behind Nightmare. He grabbed one of the tentacles in front of him for security. The knife-wielding skeleton immediately halted in place. His eye ridges rose with surprise. He can touch you? Huh? Leave him be, Killer. Nightmare grabbed the Nameless One with his tentacle and yanked him into view. He was not sure what to do, so he hung there limply. He's pathetic, but he has potential. Killer whistled. Hell yeah, he has potential if he could survive touching you. The Nameless One stifled his relief because he was not sure if it counted as a negative emotion. If Killer was interested, that was a good thing. Interest meant not being abandoned. Interest meant usefulness. Meet Killer, Horror, and Dust, Nightmare introduced. He set the Nameless One down. Boys, meet our newest recruit. This one comes from such an unfinished AU that he doesn't even have a name. A strange feeling washed over him, and he saw a strange screen in front of him. He recognized letters like the blank tail in the corner of his abandoned world. It was difficult to read the letters, but he managed. Name, no information available. Original universe, blank tail. Data unavailable. Role, data unavailable. Height, 3.8 feet, because he's a short little bitch. Level 1. And then the rest of the stuff is data inaccessible. I'm not gonna do that. Check, nobody. Killer snickered. Those are your stats? Wow, that's just sad. One of Nightmare's tentacles struck the knife from his hand and the scream faded away. No fighting him, Killer. Killer rubbed his hand and scowled. I wasn't gonna. It's not even worth the EXP. The Nameless One's fear curled along their spine at that comment. He needed to be useful, not worthless. Horror rose from his seat on the couch. He, like the other skeletons in Nightmare, was much taller and bigger than the Nameless One. Something about Horror's intense, unwavering stare unnerved him, but that was a good thing, because any negative emotions made him have a use. A large hand reached out, and the Nameless One closed his eye sockets. Was his suffering going to start already? He hoped it made him useful. He was so pathetic and useless his creator abandoned him in his world. He could not make himself hurt others to spread negativity, but he would gladly endure whatever he had to in order to be of use. Horror's hand landed on top of his skull, and he repressed a flinch. I don't know how you do that, but he could do that. The touch was strangely light and gentle. It was much warmer than Nightmare's had been. The Nameless One pushed down his relief and let his fear out. His body shook, and his bones rattled. Horror smiled. His smile was crooked, large, and slowly crept across his face. He petted the Nameless One's head. Unsure of what was expected of him, the Nameless One remained still. Ink, Horror rumbled, like his splotch. The nameless one did not understand. "Oh, you're giving it a name. That's adorable," Killer cooed, but his voice leaked malice. No wonder he was so useful to Nightmare. "What do you think, boss?" "Whatever." Nightmare was not even looking at them. His cyan eyelight was unfocused. Was he observing another world? Ink is as good a name as any. Ink was a name? His name. He now had a name of his very own. They had given him a name, which was a courtesy not even his own creator had bothered with. It might be the nicest thing anyone had ever done for him. The newly dubbed Ink struggled not to feel happy about it. The cold glint of Killer's stare made it easier. Dust shoved Killer hard enough to make him stagger, and grinned down at the new recruit. "Nice to meet you, Ink." It did not feel very nice at all. Ink nodded anyway, even though his soul was heavy in his chest. He was out of his empty white world. He tried so hard to make his empty, lifeless world a better place, and thus he could not bear the thought of harming others and making other worlds worse. He could not do it, but he would serve Nightmare and his gang through other means. He would endure whatever he had to in order to be someone and remain free. End of chapter 1! What do you guys think? Isn't it so happy?
I
Isn't it so happy?
I kind of forgot
Cheerful?
how like sad and like pathetic Ink was in the
He's
first
so
few
pathetic.
chapters. It's like, oh my god.
He's so pathetic, dude. Oh my gosh. Sorry for the stuttering between that. I've read this chapter, so I shouldn't have been stuttering at all. Okay. It's your turn. You ready to pop off?
It's my turn.
It's your turn. It's your turn.
It's my turn. My turn, guys. My turn, guys. It's gonna be significantly worse because I can't read.
He's just a pathetic little guy. He's like a wet dog.
Like,
I love.
He's so sad. He's so sad. Bros be for real sometimes.
He's just a pathetic little guy.
Bion.
Maybe the colors is an intentional design choice. He wants people to see to suffer.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe.
Right. But
I feel like that color palette isn't bad. The cyan lights are interesting, but what if it's like, you know how like the soul flares or soul lamps are in Minecraft? Like maybe it's like that type of light. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Like the you know, the blue lanterns in Minecraft. Like that's what I was picturing.
Yeah, but with the black and the blue.
What if it's like matte, like a matte black, like with like a soft like velvety blue? You know what I'm talking about? Cyan lights
are I agree. That is like literally like what was he thinking? He's insane.
No one's seeing the vision that I'm seeing.
Nightmare is not a designer. We all know that.
What if he could be? What if he could be? Y'all are dogging on this design. I'm imagining it clearly. You're all wrong. That please, cause
I mean, that's probably why he took him there first. Here's your room. It's ugly as fuck. Ugliest room in the fucking castle.
Ugliest room in the castle is funny. Oh my god, I can see my mouse now for some reason. Interesting. Could this always happen? Could you always see my mouse?
Oh my god, Dark Soul Calibur in our chat right now.
Huh?
Is that Dark Soul Calibur?
Dark Soul Z Calibur.
Is that actually like... Oh my god, it is.
I don't know who that is.
It is actually Dark Soul Calibur.
Who's
that? Oh my god.
Wait, Rosa.
It's the that made the Blue Sands joins the Bat Sands.
Blue Sands joins the Bat Sands?
That comment. How come you don't know?
I might know it. I can't think right now. Like, I don't know.
I'm a little bit like starstruck. I'm trying to stay cool right now.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to not know a comic. Hey, I'm a fake Undertale AU fan. Hi.
Welcome to the stream. Oh my god. Hi. I'm so rubbing this in Doodler's face. Oh my god. And also Noel.
I feel like I need to like look this up immediately.
You'll recognize them once you look at their art.
Should I look it up immediately while you talk to chat for a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
What was it called?
Blue joins the Bad Sands.
Oh wait, I think I might know this one. Hold on.
I literally told you. Big waves dropping by. Oh my god, I didn't even know you knew my existence. Granted, I didn't know that Overflow Crows knew me, like Simple, the one that made Clue on Instagram, Cross X Blue. But apparently they're like a fan of Roseverse. So I didn't even know any. I'm like, and I've talked to them, and they're like, "Hey, there's a." I'm like, "How do you know me? How do you know who I am? Like, how do you know?"
Oh! Oh! It's been so long since I've read this.
Well, I also
Not
like them
really. It's been
because
like a month.
their
But
Five Nights at Freddy's stuff with Sun and Moon. They got me into this like one X reader fic, and I never read X readers. Well, bro, I love your comic dubs from my comic, and I've seen your stuff around. Oh, I did forget. I did dub your comic one time. I didn't remember if you saw it or not.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's really cool.
I did do that.
I did that. Meow.
I did. You seen my stuff around? What have you seen? Right, there's many things. Anyways, Beetle, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, we can read.
This is
I feel like I'm in elementary school again. They're pointing at me. Your turn. Your turn. Speak
your
up.
turn.
Speak up. We can't hear you.
Speak up. Speak up.
The
Oh
quick.
wait, someone has a quick little question. Don't start yet.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
I'm waiting. What's the question? That's so cool though. It's like I'll see like my little Undertale like celebrity artists, and I'm like, they're like, oh, we know you though. I'm like, huh?
Cool.
I'm like, what? I don't believe that. Like, I believe I'm cool, but like, I don't see myself at the same par as those people. So then when people are just like, oh, hi, oh my god, you made Brosverse. I'm like, what? When you get like super duper famous, do you think of doing fan meets? I don't think I'm gonna get that famous. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone's had like fantasies of like, imagine if I was a big YouTuber and I got to go to a big con. I think everyone's had that dream. So yeah, I would love that. Bye, Dark. Thanks for dropping by. I was very surprised. Nice to see you. If you want to watch the VOD, we'll be reading this, so you can get into that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Ooh, Comic-Con.
Yeah, I would love to do meetups, but I don't think I'll ever get to that point until maybe if this For the Forgotten Ones video blows up. Maybe.
We know you. You made that. You made the really cool, super awesome, For the Forgotten Ones analysis.
Yeah.
Can I get your autograph, Miss Rosa Cooling?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Everybody is so much fitting how FPFO made me cry like a baby. Yeah, and it's really funny that they're just like completely anonymous, and they're just like they drop this tragic fic, and then just like that's their life. They don't have any online presence at all.
Truly a spectacular author.
They're so insane. Okay, beautiful.
Okay.
We're gonna start getting bored.
We're in chapter 2 now, guys. Something's wrong. As soon as Nightmare gave Horror and Dust orders to teach Ink and answer any stupid questions he had, he left. His departure made Ink nervous, but his new boss did not throw him back into his empty world yet, so he must be of use still. The moment Nightmare disappeared from the doorway, Killer grabbed Ink in front of his new shirt and put a knife to his throat. Ink did not suppress his fears, since it would make him useful to Nightmare. Don't make a sound, Killer hissed at him. Ink kept his mouth shut and did not make any noise. Stop! Don't make a sound! No!
Sorry. Every time I do that, I'm always just like,
don't make a sound. Killer's smirk widened. Let's make one thing clear. You aren't a member of our gang. You're nothing and nobody. You're our servant, our slave. You ain't one of us, and if you piss us off, you're gonna end up as a source of XP. Got it? Ink nodded. It caused his neck to sting, but he didn't mind. Being a source of XP would be preferable to being forced back to the whiteness that was his abandoned world. Anything was preferable to that. He would have to member to try to find Killer if Nightmare decided he wasn't of use anymore. The air moved behind...
things. God damn it. Ow. Sorry.
The air moved behind Ink, and he heard someone's low breaths. A large arm reached past Ink, and Horror touched the center of Killer's chest. From Ink's point of view, it looked like Horror merely tapped Killer. The small movement was enough to throw Killer back off his feet. He crashed into the wall and slumped down to its base, swearing loudly. A bit of crimson blood trickled down the side of his skull where it impacted the stone. Boss said no fighting, he said lowly. Dust gave a hooting laugh, and Killer threw the knife at Dust. He dodged, but the knife nicked his cheek as it flew by his head and embedded itself in the wall behind him. Horror scowled. Killer sneered back at him. Boss said no fighting, Ink. Horror grumbled but conceded. His hand rested atop Ink's skull. Ink felt something sticky where Ink's knife had nicked him and touched his neck. The sticky stuff got on his fingertips. Before he could look at it, Horror patted his skull a few times like he had before, then wrapped his arm around Ink's middle. Ink kept still as he was lifted off his feet and tucked against Horror's side. The larger skeleton walked out, scratching at the hole in his skull with his free hand. Before the door shut, Ink peeked at the cut on Dust's cheek and looked back at the blood on his own fingertips. Dust's blood was red. Killer's blood was red. Ink's blood was black. Did that mean something? Had it always been black? Ink wasn't sure. He had bled before back there, in the white emptiness, but there was no color, and his blood had looked like black graphite, powdery and faded. Now it looked more liquid-like ink or black paint. Oh my god, like his name. Ink was drawn.
No, it's his name.
Oh my god, like his name. Ink was drawn from his thoughts when Horror set him on the floor. They were in a new room with long tables along the walls. No, they were called kitchen counters. Kitchen counters were along the walls. The one with the grates on top was a stove. His room was called a kitchen. This room was called a kitchen. Ink, I can't read. Ink felt some pride as he knew those words, but Ink felt pride that he knew those words, but smothered it. Was it pride a negative emotion? Boss said you're gonna help me cook, Horror rumbled. Don't worry. Despite what the rumors say, I don't eat monsters or humans. Ink had never cooked before. He had never seen food before either. He also had never eaten before. He knew what eating was, but that was about it. He had no idea that the things Horror said were an option, but now that he knew, he could not stop himself from feeling relieved that Horror did not consider him or other people food. He looked nervously at the doorway, but Nightmare did not appear to throw him back. Maybe relief counted as a negative feeling? Horror patted his skull again, his smile wide. Horror patted his skull again and smiled his wide, crooked smile. Do you know what spaghetti is? Ink shook his head. Horror patiently guided him through the steps to make spaghetti and pasta sauce. It was mostly involved opening packages and heating water and sauce on the stovetop. It took Ink a few tries to light the stove, and that was only because he spent time marveling at the smooth texture of the knob. He almost touched the flame that sprouted up, but Horror guided his hands away. Don't do that, it'll hurt. Ink doubted it would hurt as much as his attempt to destroy his own soul, but added it to the list of things to remember anyway. Whenever Ink did something right, Horror would pat his skull and mumble praise. Ink struggled not to perk up at every contact and word and new experience. There were so many new sounds, like the hiss of the flame or the soft pops of boiling water. There were so many smells, like the pasta, the sauce, and the muskiness of Horror's coat. It was almost too much after being alone in the whiteness for so long. Horror let him try a noodle, and some sauce to see if it was done. It was too hot and burned his tongue, but that was not why Ink cried again. He was so happy to experience this, even if it hurt. Unfortunately, Horror seemed to realize he was not crying because of the pain. He picked up a towel and wiped away a few tears with it. Listen, Ink, Horror muttered. I don't know where you came from, but Boss won't kick you out for feeling. You don't have to be negative all the time. Boss won't mind if you're happy on occasion. Just try to reel it in when he's around. He frowned as though a thought had just occurred to him. It's weird you aren't very affected by his aura. Ink had no idea what aura he was talking about, but nodded anyway. Dinner was served. Nightmare was not present. The member Ink had not met called Cross was still absent too. Dust scratched at the bandage that had been placed on his cheek as he argued with a patch of thin air that no, he could not have any spaghetti. Horror heaped spaghetti onto Ink's plate and sat next to him. Killer looked even angrier than usual when he saw what was on his plate. He played with one of his knives and smiled at Ink with all of his teeth until Horror curtly told him not to waste food. Ink looked around long enough to see the others using forks to pick up their food, then focused on his own plate. He awkwardly grabbed the fork by wrapping his whole hand around it and poked at the pasta. It slipped off the fork. Killer noticed and laughed. Ink sat lower in his seat and tried again, only for the same thing to happen. A shadow fell over him, and he peeked up at Horror. Horror took his plate. Before Ink could do more than flinch, Horror took out a knife and cut up the spaghetti into smaller pieces. He gave the plate back and patted Ink's skull. Should have said something. You don't need to struggle. Sorry. I'm just... Anyway, sorry guys, I got a little emotional. Don't even... He's so sweet. He's so sweet, Rosa. I love him too.
We love him.
He's
Horror's the best.
That's my man. Where was I? Don't you have something to say to Horror? Killer sneered at him. Was he allowed to talk now? Ink frantically sorted through his memories to figure out what Killer meant. He thought of Horror's actions while they were cooking. Good job? Good job. Dust burst into laughter so hard that he curled up and nearly planted his face in his spaghetti. Ink marveled at his reaction. Dust reacted to what Ink said. He heard what Ink said and responded to it. It was hard not to be happy about that wonderful experience. Wow, you really are stupid, Killer said dryly. Well, that made it easier to not be happy. Ink's eye sockets stung. He tried to take comfort in knowing that Nightmare would sense his misery. He would be a bit useful. It's okay, Ink, Horror said loudly but firmly. He stared coolly at Dust until he stifled his laughter, then shifted his gaze to Killer. Killer did not seem to care. When somebody says help, say thank you. Thank you, Ink parroted. How do you not know that? Dust asked. What did you grow up under a rock? Since he asked, Ink nervously corrected him. An empty white space, actually. Yeah, Killer drawled. Killer drawled. We all grew up in Snowden. Ink did not understand. No, everything was an empty white. My world had no name or any, poor you. It was clear Killer wasn't listening to him. Ink committed their disinterest to memory, and guessed his AU wasn't that special. It made him feel sick to know there were other empty, white, abandoned worlds out there. He hastily turned back to his spaghetti. Sorry. Ink carefully scooped up some of the pasta and put it in his mouth. It was It was really hard not to cry of It was really hard not to cry tears of joy as flavors assaulted his senses. For the first time in his existence, Ink had a meal. He sat at a table in a house or castle with other people that reacted to him and acknowledged he existed. It was better than anything he'd ever expected for himself. Oh my god. Ink had given up on his life a long time ago, but there he was. He was sitting in a house. Oh wait, I reread this. I'm sorry. Wait, no. No, it's just a repeat.
No, this is just repeating this.
I thought I was rereading the paragraph.
He's just really happy.
He's just really happy. He's repeating his own thoughts and made me go crazy. Ink had given up on having a life a long time ago, but here he was sitting in a house that was a castle. He was sitting in a castle in a world filled with grass and a sky and wind. He was sitting at a table with other people who looked at him and had emotions and reacted to things. He was eating spaghetti. This spaghetti was so wonderful he almost cried again. No wonder so many papyri love spaghetti.
Papyri.
Papyri? Papyri?
Okay.
It's not papyri?
No, it's papyri.
I don't like that. No, what? Papyri?
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
that. I've always read it as papyri. Okay. How did Ink know that many papyri love spaghetti? What even were papyri? Dust looked at the empty space by his shoulder. You're right, Papyrus. He turned back to Ink. Got any more questions, kid? Ink checked the empty space by Dust's shoulder and thought he saw something. He blinked a few times and an outline appeared. It was strange and shimmery, almost like an outline made of codes. Codes? What were codes? Nightmare said Ink could ask questions. Killer told Ink not to speak, but Dusk just asked if he had any questions. Ink almost asked about the codes, but when he thought about it, a chill felt over his soul, and he knew Nightmare would feel. He shivered and put that question aside to focus on a safer one. Why was asking about codes not safe? Who is Papyrus? Horace stopped twirling his pasta around his fork. You don't have a... The Great Papyrus is the royal guard in training. Dust puffed out. Wow, really? Dust's chest puffed out, and he jabbed a thumb over his shoulder at the empty space. He's also my cool little brother. Ink saw the outline of codes and spoke to him. Hello, Papyrus. He thought he heard a whisper. Killer groaned and rolled his eyes. Don't encourage him. Horace shoved him in his skull. Not hard enough that he fell over, but hard enough that he winced. Be nice. You're in the wrong group if you want nice, bud. Killer sneered. His cold eye sockets focused on Ink. Ink did not respond. Killer had already given his message. Ink would remember it. He was not a member of Nightmare's gang. The others had souls and emotions and would react to Ink, but they would never care for him. He would be lonely. It would be a lonely existence, but it was still better than the white emptiness that was now devoid of even the sketches. Nightmare had destroyed them all. They did not have emotions for him, so they were useless to him. Thus they were discarded. But Nightmare saw a use for Ink, despite his refusal to terrorize and destroy AUs. He had to remember that too. As long as he was useful, he could exist out here. If he was no longer, there was not even a couldn't. If he was no longer useful, he would be discarded and thrown back into the empty whiteness that was now completely devoid of anything else. That was his new fate. Ink hoped it would be a while before it was abandoned again. Ink forced himself to look at Dust and made him uneasy, so he kind of looked past Dust at the codes of Papyrus instead, but hopefully he would not notice. Nightmare said something about magic? Dust's curious expression became something much more sour and annoyed. Please tell me you know what magic is. Ink nodded before he could think about it. He did think about it. He realized he did know what magic was. That was another relief. I don't know what mine is. There's only one way to figure that out, Killer purred. Horror cuffed him upside the head. It was very different from the gentle way he handled Ink. No. I won't hurt him, Killer claimed. Even Ink could tell that was a lie. Apparently dinner was a thing that was done when it was late, and late meant it would soon be time to sleep. Dust showed Ink another room like the one Nightmare had shown him earlier. Dust gave Ink a worried look when he asked what it was, but explained it was known as a bedroom. It was meant for sleeping in. Ink wanted to explore the room he had been given, but if rooms were for sleeping in, he did not want to push his luck by not sleeping in it. He never slept before. His creator had abandoned him before he was given the ability to. If Ink had been able to sleep, it would have been a nice break from the endless whiteness and apathy of his world. Ink crawled right into the bed, on top of the blankets, and laid there, but he was not sure how to sleep. Was he supposed to lay on the bed until he fell unconscious? Ink tried, but it was very cold. He got up and crawled under the blankets instead. It was much warmer that way. He spent a long time staring at the ceiling in fear. What if he had somehow fallen asleep in the empty whiteness, and none of this was real? What if he was back there when he woke up because he was never out? What if his rescue was real, but Nightmare decided to abandon him too? Ink reminded himself that as long as he was useful to Nightmare, he could stay. The comfort from that thought was enough for him to relax slowly. Every part of him seemed to grow heavy, and his eye sockets slid closed. For the first time in his existence, Ink fell asleep. It took exactly 8 seconds after Ink went to bed for Nightmare to sense the approach of his subordinates. Their auras radiated a variety of negative emotions. Dust was uneasy, Horror was upset, and Killer was predictably angry. Nightmare sighed and reluctantly put the book he had been reading aside as he sat down at his desk. The door slammed open as he folded his hands together atop it, and he allowed his tentacles to flick to show his irritation. Killer stormed right up to his desk and slammed his hands down on the top of it, making several papers fly off and flutter to the floor. It was a good thing Nightmare had marked the pages in his book, or he might be even more irate. I know that word. One blast from his negative aura would send them scurrying. He reeled it in and held it like a viper ready to strike. What the hell are you thinking recruiting that waste of existence? Killer demanded. Nightmare eyed him coolly, letting his aura shift and curl around his subordinate. He sensed the exact moment Killer remembered who was in charge. His childish annoyance released him, and he backed up a step. Nightmare kept no expression. In all honesty, finding Ink had been an unlikely chance. The surge of negativity he gave off attracted Nightmare like a moth to a flame, and he found himself in that empty, abandoned AU that might be somewhere in the anti-void. Going to the anti-void was always a risk, with the possibility of error lurking around, but if something else was alive in there, Nightmare wanted to see it. It was pure curiosity that drew Nightmare there, nothing more. That unexpected curiosity gave him an equally unexpected opportunity. Nightmare had not even comprehended what he was seeing before he rushed to try to stop Ink from destroying his soul. Grabbing his hands had been instinct, but in all honesty, it shouldn't be. Wow, I can't read. Grabbing his hands had been instinct, but in all honesty, it should have been a death sentence. Very few could survive Nightmare's touch, especially with so much negativity in the AU around them. All that negativity came from one lonely soul. A soul so desperate to escape, he decided to destroy himself to do it. It was the most ironic that the soul that so desperately wanted to die could survive Nightmare's touch. Ink was quite the anomaly. He was no one and nothing, yet he could touch Nightmare. It was curiosity that drew Nightmare to his location, and it was curiosity that had the guardian of negativity recruit him. Ink's refusal to terrorize the multiverse was, surprisingly, yet another check in his favor. If Nightmare wanted another killer, he'd go and get one. No, Ink was unique. Something about him was special. Nightmare wanted to know that. Nightmare leaned back in his chair, his tentacles shifted and flicked behind him, in deceptively soothing and hypnotic movements. He noted how Killer's attention shifted towards them until he focused it away. I did not know I had to explain myself to you, Killer. Killer growled at him like a sulking dog. Nightmare almost smiled at the petulant display. He didn't, because he knew why Killer was gnawing at the bit to turn their newest recruit into dust. Nightmare was not in the mood to peel apart Killer's psyche, so he settled for a warning glare. That's how you say that, right? Psyche?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sorry. Dust looked between them and nervously fiddled with the tattered red scarf around his neck. Cross is going to be Wow, I'm Southern now? Cross is going to be happy that he's not. I don't know why I keep reading it in a Southern accent. I'm going insane. Why, everyone here is focus. Anyway. Where am I? Cross is going wow, really? Cross is going to be happy he's not the rookie anymore. That ink stain is not one of us, Killer hissed. He's a Stars Dam level 1. Nobody. He'll have a purpose, Nightmare's voice hardened. And it's not to be a source of EXP. You will not harm him, accidentally or otherwise. Yes, boss, Killer muttered through bare teeth. Do you know how he can touch you, boss? Dust blurted. None of us can without... Wow, really? None of us can without losing a lot of HP, and that's only when you're, weakened. Dust almost dusted. Horror mumbled.
Oh, sorry. Really?
Really? He almost dusted, bro. Nightmare. Okay. Nightmare grimaced. He had warned his followers not to touch him when he first recruited them. When a fight with Dream and a nauseatingly positive AU had gone badly, Dust had tried to pull Nightmare through a portal during their retreat. Dust would have died if Horror had not had a magic butterscotch pie on hand that day. I don't know how Ink does it, but I intend to find out. Dust, test his magic as best you can without harming him, Nightmare ordered. I want to know what he's capable of. Dust saluted. Papyrus and I will do our best, boss. He's nice to Pap, so I won't complain. Oh, he likes his brother. He loves his brother.
I would hope so.
I mean, he killed him, but you know. Nightmare did not bother to acknowledge Dust's hallucination of the brother he killed. Oh, yeah. Dust was amicable towards Ink. There would be less ill intent in his attacks, and it would be easier for the rookie to survive them. Any fight was a risk without knowing Ink's stats. That was another oddity about him. Usually the ones that with hidden stats were outcodes, guardians, and other powerful entities like Core. It was impossible for Ink to simply be an abandoned Sans. No. He was meant to be something more. Something powerful. Nightmare would find out what.
You sound like a little kitten. You got this.
Dust almost dusted. A light touch brought Ink back to awareness. His eyes opened. He did not remember closing them. Horror stood over him and patted his head once more. Get up. It's time to make breakfast. Ink didn't know what breakfast was, but immediately rose. Horror took in his appearance and chuckled. It was a low rumble like his voice. You aren't supposed to sleep in those. Use pajamas. He patted the fabric that lay over the back of the chair next to the bed. Ink felt his heat in his face. Horror's eyes widened. Rainbow? Ink looked at the mirror and was delighted to see a variety of colored freckles in the rainbow blush on his face. Oh, he has freckles? I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, sorry, I got distracted, guys. I love this.
He
I love
like
this fig.
He likes star ones.
Oh, that's cute. Okay. It faded as he studied it, much to his disappointment. Ink reached for the pajamas, but Horror shooed him away. Too late now. Come on. They returned to the kitchen and made breakfast. Breakfast had been a different food than dinner. Ink made sure to remember there was a difference for when he helped Horror. Except Horror was much better at cooking than him. Ink was not sure how much help he would be. It made him anxious. He needed to be useful and find a purpose. Breakfast was as wonderful as dinner. Ink kept his head down and tried to keep his happiness reined in. The moment their plates were empty, Dust grabbed his arm and pulled him out of his chair. We're starting lessons today, kid. The first thing you're learning is how to fight. I'm not. Ink tried to stop in place, but Dust kept pulling and dragged him off his feet. After some struggle, he managed to regain his footing. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight, Killer mocked. That's hilarious. Yeah, sure. You're not, kid. Dust's tone was not as patronizing as Killer's, but it still stung. Honestly, we're all waiting for Killer to attack you. You need to know something about battling or you're going to die. Sorry.
Damn.
They're so mean to him. It's funny as fuck. Ink peered nervously at Killer, who smiled back, malicious and slow. An image flashed through Ink's mind of a cat tearing apart a mouse, and he shivered. He looked back, but Horror was picking up the dishes and did not join them. Killer noticed what he did and laughed lowly, unlike Horror's laugh. It sent shivers up Ink's spine. Shiver. I don't know why I'm lisping whenever I but I hate it. Sorry.
It does.
Shivers up thin spine. Killer's gaze shifted back towards Horror and he lowered his voice. Let me make something clear to you, since you're too stupid to see it yourself. Horror only cares about you because the boss ordered it. The moment the boss orders you to be strung up and tortured, he'll do it with a smile on his face. You'll be wise to remember that. Ink felt a familiar sense of despair. That was good. He had some use. He should not have hoped that Horror cared. Just because Ink was happy to be around others did not mean that Horror was happy to be stuck with a stupid, useless nobody who would not even be worth the EXP. I keep trying to just say XP. They might barely tolerate him, but at least the others acknowledged him and reacted to him. Ink would cherish that luxury, and Horror's kindness, as commanded as it may be, while he could. That was a sentence. Ink already had so much he never got the chance to experience before. He resolved not to hope for anything more. Killer was satisfied by whatever misery showed on Ink's face. Ink should be thankful that Killer was helping him provide more negative emotions. There's no more there. In truth, he just felt miserable. I'm sorry for adding words that don't exist. I don't know why I'm doing that. Dust brought Ink into a large room. It was a mostly empty space except for a few charred and sliced fabric-looking things in shapes of monsters. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in gouges and burns. Red circular targets were lined up along one of the walls. One of them had splatters of some darkish brown red substance on it. Dust walked up to one of the fabric-looking things and smacked it. It wobbled, and Ink saw red numbers flicker in the air beside it. Know what this is? Ink shook his head. Course not. Dust muttered. This is a training dummy. You'll hit it and see what kind of damage you can do. So let's see. Attack the dummy. Ink didn't move. He looked uncertainly at the dummy. Dust gestured towards it, at it. Punch the dummy. Smack it. Kick it. Whatever you want. Ink obeyed the order, but did not move. But still, wow, I can't read. Ink obeyed the order, but he still did not move. I'm sorry. Give me patience, Paps. Dust muttered. It's just a dummy. It doesn't even have a soul in it. If it did, Killer would have killed it. You bet I would have. Their interactions are cracking me up, and it's not even funny. You bet I would have, Killer said gleefully. His empty sockets were locked into Ink's face. Hit the dummy. I want to see the damage you could do. Ink reluctantly stepped up to the dummy and eyed it uncertainly. He knew he was already in a bad position with these members of Nightmare's gang, but he could not make himself fight. Not even to appease them or as pretend. He did not want to do any damage. Why did he need to? The dummy hadn't done anything. The dummy did not ask to exist, only to be punched and hit. It must be a sad, lonely existence for it to only receive touch through harm. Ink hugged the dummy.
I can't.
I'm cringing.
My God.
He's so sweet, but my God. I would have beat the shit out of that dummy. Better than me. Anyway. There you go. Strangle. Wait. Dust's jaw fell open. No, you're not supposed to. He trailed off with a sigh. Killer covered his black eye sockets. Boss sure knows how to pick 'em. This is just embarrassing. I can't stand it. Before Ink could react, Killer grabbed him by the neck and dragged him over to the open area on the other side of the training room. You have two choices, Killer snarled. Fight the dummy or fight me. He threw Ink to the ground. The floor was not hard like the stone floors elsewhere in the castle, but it still sent a jolt up his wrist when he landed. Ink looked up and immediately threw himself backwards. Killer's knife sliced through the air where his head had been. Ink rolled to his feet, but had to throw himself to the side as Killer swiped at him. It was close enough that the knife sliced his shirt. Killer's mocking laugh burrowed itself into Ink's head, and his soul pounded frantically. He dodged another slash, then a stab, then another slash. He knew Killer was merely playing with him, and could easily stab him if he wanted to. His constant laughter proved it. We're here to fight, not have dance lessons, brat. A kick swiped Ink's leg out from under him, and he fell to the ground. Killer pounced on him and put his knife to Ink's throat. If the boss didn't want you for something, I'd take this pathetic amount of EXP you'd give me, Killer hissed. Unfortunately for you, he thinks you're worth something, so you get to survive. But you won't survive if you won't fight. The Nightmare Gang are all killers. Sorry, he calls them all the Nightmare Gang.
The Nightmare Gang.
Including your new friend Horror. He won't protect you, and one of us might slip. For the second time, Killer's knife cut into Ink's neck. A blue glow appeared in front of Killer's chest. Dust jerked his hand up, and Killer was thrown upward. He slammed into the ceiling, then the wall, then slid down onto the floor. That's not a word. Ink listened to the long list of words that he identified as swears. Oh, great idea, Paps. Killer can teach Ink profanity, Dust said. His jovial words did not match his annoyed expression. He stormed over and kicked Killer in the leg. You could have killed him. He's stupid and naive. He needs to learn how things work, Killer growled. Kill or be killed. Dust rolled his eyes. The blue light disappeared from Killer's chest. Dust noticed Ink's curious expression. That blue attack that affects the soul. That was a blue attack that affects the soul. It's a type of magic. Do you know that, at least? The question sounded sarcastic, but Ink didn't know that. Before he could speak, Killer pushed himself to his feet and stalked up to him. He did not have his knife out, so Ink stayed in place and looked at him with huge eye sockets. Killer sneered down at him. I have to admit, you lasted longer than I thought. Sanses are good at dodging, but no one can dodge forever. You will fight, and you will kill, or you will die. The multiverse is not kind. It isn't merciful. It's cruel. Genocide timelines outnumber others by the hundreds of thousands. Genocide timelines. The phrase made dread pool in Ink's soul as information about what a genocide timeline was flooded in his mind. I can't say that word. His empty, hopeless, white world was terrible, but the thought of someone intentionally killing and destroying everyone in their path sounded just as bad. Killer and Dust and Killer were from genocide timelines, Ink realized, while horror was from a neutral one, and that still went terribly wrong. Ink did not understand how he knew that by looking at him. He only knew that he refused to hurt or kill no matter how difficult it made his existence. I won't hurt anyone, Ink whispered. Killer's smile was nasty as it was cold. Then the multiverse is going to crush you into dust. Something was terribly wrong. Dream could not explain the feeling of terror that gripped his soul and squeezed it until he was certain it would burst. It came out of nowhere and so suddenly... Oh my god, nowhere?
Oh my god!
It came out of nowhere and so suddenly that he briefly thought it was a panic attack. It was not. He knew what one felt like, and this was not it. This fear was a quieter and more foreboding dread that slowly sank its claws in. Something was terribly wrong. More wrong than usual.
What a
the
big
multiverse
baby.
was... What?
I said, what a big baby.
For real. Anyway, something was terribly wrong. More wrong than usual. The multiverse was not a nice or safe place. When certain outcodes and inhabitants of AUs realized other worlds existed, it was inevitable that threats that spanned across the multiverse would rise up and seek to spread chaos. Those threats, which included Dream's own brother, Nightmare, Dream himself, rose... Dream himself rose up to stand against his twin, but unfortunately no one rose up in turn to stop the many other threats that wanted to conquer, corrupt, or destroy. That left Dream, who was supposed to be the guardian of positivity, as one of the few who tried to protect not just one AU, but the multiverse as a whole. Dreamtale was long gone, but even if it still existed, Dream could not imagine sitting idly by, as so many other worlds were placed in danger. He was one of the very few who cared. Underswap Sans, more commonly called Blue, cared enough to leave his world in order to protect others, moving into the Omega timeline with his brother and letting Dream sleep on his couch whenever he was sure that Nightmare would not try to track him there. Corfrisk did... Bro was paranoid. Corfrisk did their best to contain threats before they became a problem.
Sorry.
But they were busy with the Omega timeline, which recently had to be expanded again because so many more people had moved in. Corfrisk was a powerful force in the multiverse, but they could not be the multiverse defender. Multi-voices defendo. Yeah.
Multi-voices defendo.
Multi-voices defendo. Other than Dream, Blue, and the occasional other Sans, Papyrus, Frisk, Kara, Gaster, or Undyne, no one else seemed interested in protecting the multiverse as a whole. Other than Blue, no one stuck around to keep fighting to keep the multiverse safe. They would assist when their AU or AU of someone they knew was threatened, but they would quickly return to their own world and enjoy the peace there while countless other worlds burn. They're gay. Dream did not blame any of them, nor could he hate them for their inaction. Fighting Nightmare and his gang was a terrifying duty few were able to commit themselves to. Most of the other time, Dream's aura was not strong enough to protect his allies from nightmares. Dream did not hate, but he was certainly disappointed that no one else was committed to stopping threats to the multiverse, despite the reality that they were multiverse-level threats for a reason. Only Blue stayed at Dream's side. When Nightmare targeted Underswap, Blue jumped into the fray to help Dream and vowed to defend the multiverse alongside him. He called the two of them the Star Sanses and claimed they would bring hope to a multiverse that was losing it. He also called Dream his friend.
Yay!
Sure. That last bit kept Dream going more than he could ever admit out loud. Blue was a royal guard in training, kind and loyal and bright. Dream would have fallen long ago without him. I thought it was going to say Dream would have fallen for him.
That's what you think about your friend.
Even when he was trapped in the bleakest of AUs, Blue's aura gave him the strength to remain on his feet. Even when he was close to despair that he could not fight for the residents of the AU that was so often blamed him for not doing more, Dream could still fight for Blue. Bro is going on about Blue for paragraphs.
Yeah, this is really platonic, guys.
This is so platonic. This is so platonic. They're just friends and sometimes roommates. It was becoming much more difficult to fight Nightmare. Every fight, Dream felt Nightmare grow stronger. Every fight, Dream felt himself becoming weaker. And then there were the fights with Error. The mere thought of this destroy.
My man! Sorry.
Calm down! Anyway, the mere he's not in his right mind right now, Rosa. He can't consent to anything. The mere thought of the Destroyer sent an icy chill of fear through Dream's core. Calling their encounters fights was an outright lie. All Dream and Core could do was throw as many shields up around the AU that Error targeted as they were able to. Wow, really? This is a sentence. All Dream and Core could do was throw as many shields up around the AU that Error targeted as they were able to, and get as many people into the Omega timeline as they could before Error destroyed the world. That was a run-on sentence, and I hated it. Okay.
Also, I never realized this while reading the first time. That implies that Dream and FTFO can use codes.
How? Wait, what? How can you
use codes? Because they're putting up shields in, like...
Oh, I was thinking of a more, like, physical shield for Dream.
Maybe, but I don't think that would really stop Error, who could just glitch through it.
Maybe it's like, a mixture of both, of Core being able to use codes and Dream being able to make physical barriers, mashing that together to make a stronger shield. It could be something like that.
Still senses. Continue.
I lost where I was. Let me look. Okay. The run-on sentence. Got it. Any world that Error targeted was doomed. No one could stand against him. They slowed him down, but they could not stop him. Even Dream and Nightmare were first forced to flee from the Destroyer whenever he appeared. Blue once called Error a force of nature more than a person, and Dream could only agree. Sometimes Error would be almost sane enough. Sane, though, considering him sane, was a bit of a stretch. Sane, for Error, was talking to thin air, hissing at the empty sky, and watching his strings tear souls to shreds with an eerily serene expression. However, like Blue said, most times Error would be more like a force of nature instead of a person. Those times Error would not speak. He would howl and scream as though he was in physical agony, as he tore everything he could reach. His tormented and animal-like shrieks were filled with such pain and rage that many who heard it collapsed or joined him in his tortured madness. Damn, that's scary as fuck, though. If you think about it, like, oh my god.
Have you seen the art of FTFO Error?
No.
Like, his face is, like, literally melted, and you can see, like, oh, it's terrifying.
Like, I've imagined it in my head, very vividly. I'm scared.
I'll have to... after stream.
Look some up. Anyway. In many AUs, the damage... Did I skip something? No, I didn't. In many AUs, the image of death was not Reaper, but Error. The darkest AUs tried to sacrifice some of their own to the Destroyer, as though he was a malevolent deity that would be appeased through worship. Error would not
foreshadowing. I'm not going to say how it's foreshadowing, but that's foreshadowing, Beetle, you remember?
I know it's foreshadowing, that's why I paused.
Yeah, I just picked up on that. Sorry, continue.
Error would not be appeased. Fun fact, guys. Fun fact, Error's not being appeased. He would not spare or stop. Any AU he appeared in was torn and destroyed, his inhabitants hunted down and slaughtered until the whole world collapsed. Sometimes Air screamed a pattern as he rampaged, his tear marks stained red-purple by the blood that ran from his sockets. Jesus Christ, I forgot how terrible he looked. What he screamed was
He's
too
like
much.
disgusting.
Like, it's vile how Air is described when he's corrupted like this. What he screamed was too much like an animal's roars to be called words. But with Psy and a few Gaster's tech, core scientists had been able to record the Destroyer's howls, and
The Destroyer's
I'm
howls.
struggling, and translate them. Or error.
Mm-hmm.
Error was not simply screaming. He was ranting a glitched mantra of madness over and over and over again. Find the creator, find the protector 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 creator. My stutter came in clutch. Once upon a time,
your stutter actually helped you a lot there.
Yay, repetitive sentences! Once upon a time, rumors had spread that there were... Wow, really? Rumors had spread there must be a protector or creator out there to counter Error's destruction. The story went that the ones that watched would see the terrors brought to the multiverse and create an entity that would guard the multiverse itself, protecting it from harm. For a while, those stories brought hope, and one day a protector would come, a creator that could fix the damage done to the multiverse. But nobody came. Any mentions of that story would get you laughed at. Any mentions of the story would get you laughed out of the room these days. There was no protector or creator. The multiverse was tipped so far in favor of negativity and destruction that many feared it could never be fixed, and it was only going to get worse. The scale was broken. One day, the whole mechanism would shatter, and everything and everyone would simply cease to exist. Dream tried to tell Nightmare. He explained that existence itself was in danger, and offered alliances and truces, but his pleas always fell on deaf ears. Dream's brother had died hundreds of years ago when he ate that black apple, but Nightmare was still the guardian of negativity. He must understand that there would be no more negativity if the multiverse died. He must sense that there was already so much negativity that it had become toxic in several worlds, killing its inhabitants if they stayed. Yet Nightmare did not listen or care. He acted as though he could not hear Dream's pleas at all. Sometimes, as he huddled in an empty alley of whatever AU he was currently hiding in, Dream let himself hope that his brother could not in fact hear him. He let himself hope that Nightmare would care if he could hear Dream's warnings. He let himself hope that something kept Nightmare ignorant to the damage that he was doing, and it was not his brother's own will that made him march down a path to the complete annihilation of his existence. Something was terribly wrong, but something was always wrong these days. More genocide, corrupted, and obliteration timelines popped up than anything else. More alternate universes fell every day. The multiverse was broken. The multiverse was dying. There was no protector or creator to save it.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. So how'd you like it?
Oh.
That was a struggle. Oh my god.
You did your best.
I
think you did.
I can't read very well, especially out loud. Or speak, apparently. Meow.
Huh?
What has chat said this whole time? Because I've seen the little pop-up.
I try to scroll all the way. Did I think I missed something. Oh, I just saw. Also, Rosa, I'm that one. I'm not gonna call you annoying because you're not annoying. Person always doing ass on your Tumblr, and I just want to say I love you so much, and thanks to you, I've made changes and added things to my upcoming series. Genuinely love you so much. Oh, that's so sweet. That's so nice. I'm so glad I can inspire you, and you're not annoying. I love getting Tumblr ass. I don't answer immediately nowadays because of college, but I still love getting them. What's your favorite part of the chapters? I love Ink's chapters. I like Dream, but I like focusing on Ink.
Dream's cool, I guess. No.
Mr.
Guys.
Error content? What is Mr. Error?
I don't know.
You sound so scared.
Is it TikTok? I don't know.
Mr. Error?
Look it up, and it's like the most obscene thing ever. Whoa!
Is it an Error Inc. thing? I don't know what this is.
Why is Amino popping up?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. I wasn't really into the AUs until now, like, as I'm, like, a regular person. Now that I'm, like, into it nowadays, I'm into, like, the modern ones. And a little bit of the older ones. I got stressful at the end, low-key. Is it chapter 3 time? Is it chapter 3 time?
Is it, Rosa?
I think so. And it's my turn.
I forgot the creator's name, but it was their version of air. Even though he isn't air, he's just a parasite. What?
Interesting. So he's more like a concept than actual error.
Beep.
Guys, it's my turn. It's my turn.
Guys, it's Rosa's turn. Ink was like abusive. No, why is Ink abusive? Guys, he doesn't know any better. He can't feel feelings. That doesn't mean he doesn't know right from wrong. I hate it when people like make Ink.
Hello, Healer Ink. Hello, Ink. Hello, for the forgotten ones. Hello, for the forgotten ones.
Hello, Daddies. Hello, what's up? Hello.
Hello, Daddies. Hello, Daddies.
I'm gonna read the next chapter in this voice from now on. I'm gonna just do voices the entire time. I think that'll help me not die. I don't know why. I'm gonna speak in a British tone.
Guys. It's Rosa's turn. Cracking my knuckles. Sitting the fuck up. I'm getting ready. Okay.
Some breathing exercises.
Breathing exercises. Chapter 3. Introduction to... Sometimes, Nightmare questioned his decisions. He knew Ink would be different than his other recruits when he picked him up from that abandoned world, but he did not expect how different. Cruelty and violence were each a part of how the multiverse worked. It was the natural state of things and simply how they were. Nightmare would not force Ink to terrorize AUs, but he needed to be able to at least fight. When Dust told him that Ink would not harm at all, Nightmare called his newest recruit into office. Nightmare remained silent as Ink stood in front of his desk. The slices on Ink's neck were small, but Nightmare could see that they were from a knife. The person responsible was no mystery. Of course, the idiots did not mention it to him, and of course, this idiot did not know that he had to take care of his injuries. Ink shivered, fidgeted, and avoided his boss's gaze as his fear permeated the air. Yet he did not falter. He did not beg, or backtrack, or try to give excuses. Nightmare did not think Ink was that serious about his vow of pacifism. The aura of fear that always surrounded Ink led him to believe that he would give in to the pressure. Yet the opposite was true. Ink was terrified, but he did not back down. He meant it when he said he would not terrorize or harm. Nightmare felt the first inkling of grudging respect for him, for that even if it made Ink act more like one of Dream's sensible teammates than his own. That's a sentence. That thought gave Nightmare pause. Truthfully, Nightmare did not need another killer on his team, especially not one that was so reluctant to cause harm. Forcing Ink to hurt others would make him miserable, but the effort would not be worth the long-term investment. Ink was an unknown to everyone in the multiverse. If he did not fight with the Gain, he might remain an unknown and not be linked to Nightmare at all. Having a recruit that can walk openly in the worlds that Dream and his ilk guarded could be a benefit. Once Nightmare made sure Ink would not be murdered by a malicious Flowey the moment he stepped foot outside. Nightmare filed that thought away for later and stared at his troublesome new recruit. That's also foreshadowing.
Yeah.
You won't fight. Ink winced. He remained silent. Nightmare did not press the subject. Not yet. Did Dust explain the kind of magic Sanses usually have? Yes, Ink said. His voice was barely audible even in the silence of the room. Nightmare's cyan eyelight shrank in warning and shifted into a more slit-like shape. What's wrong? Speak up. Ink raised his head a little, but kept his gaze averted. He's autistic, don't do this to him. The volume of his voice did not increase. I saw the attacks they use, but they don't feel right. Of course they did not. Blasters and bones sharp enough to kill were not meant for friendly sparring, and Dust and Killer's high levels of violence would give their attacks an additional aura of murderous ill intent. Ink would not be used to it. He had come from a world of nothing. He did not know the difference between a house and a castle. Nightmare did not intend to throw him into the greater multiverse, but he was only now realizing just how ill-prepared Ink was to step into it. Why did he recruit this Sans again? Nightmare's tentacles flickered in displeasure. Ink's eyelights followed the movement, and before Nightmare could react, he reached out and grasped one of his tentacles. Nightmare tensed and glared. He knew Ink had survived his touch before, yet he still waited for Ink to scream in agony and crumble into dust. Ink's fear flared up, but he did not release him. "What are you doing?" Nightmare demanded. Ink shrugged and did not look at him. He still kept hold of the tentacle. Touch-starved, Nightmare noted. It made sense considering what environment Ink had come from. Why he decided to cling to Nightmare, of all people, was another story. Nightmare was tempted to shove Ink away. It would greatly increase his misery, but he also wanted to figure out how Ink was able to touch him without dying. He needed more data for that. "You're useless to me in a fight." Nightmare ignored Ink's flinch. "Do you know why I first decided to try to recruit you?" Ink shook his head. "No one else can safely touch me. Most will dust or die instantly." Nightmare's memory flashed back to Dust's agonized shrieks. "Even if I am in the most positive AUs, none can touch me." We're not going to do all the chapters. We're doing like 5.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they have any questions, you can type in chat.
Mm-hmm.
Ink's fear shifted into sadness, but it was tainted by compassion. It was compassion and not pity, because pity had a negative tint to it that Nightmare would sense and enjoy. The way Ink looked at Nightmare reminded him far too much of Dream from before. Stars, the multiverse was going to crush him. Nightmare pulled his tentacle out of Ink's grasp. "You're different, and I intend to know why." "I won't be much help," Ink mumbled. His fear flared up, and he hastily amended what he said. "I won't be much help in that because I don't know the answers, but I can learn." Nightmare could see what he was afraid of. Ink was terrified of being thrown back in the empty white world he came from. If Nightmare threatened to do it unless Ink fought, would he give in? Nightmare knew the answer was no. It would take more than a rough push and some threats to make Ink fight. Nightmare had no intention to push him. Yet. Nightmare rose from his chair and walked out. He thought he heard Ink scramble to follow him, but there were no footsteps. Nightmare looked behind him and startled when he saw Ink was right behind him. His bare feet should have made noise on the stone floor, but he moved silently. Ink did not ask where they were going. He merely followed without question. Nightmare suspected that he could drag Ink to the dungeon and he would not object. He only resisted when they wanted him to cause harm. Interesting. Since you refuse to discover your magic through combat, you will have to study the types of magic through books. You can read, right? Ink nodded. His desperation should be delightful, but instead it made Nightmare feel discomforted. Yes, fuck! Yes, that was it. The most easiest, fucking sentence is what got me.
Me as fuck.
Educate yourself on the types of magic Sanses possess, Nightmare ordered. This includes bone attacks, gastroblasters, blue and orange attacks, and karmic retribution. Sorry. I forgot about that word for a second.
Karmic.
He considered some of the more unique alternate Sanses he had encountered, and added more just to be on the safe side. You may look into yellow attacks and green healing magic as well. Ink's white eyelights snapped to his face. Nightmare did not falter, but the sudden intensity of his gaze caught him off guard. Healing magic. Many monsters can use green magic to heal. It lets you repair damage, Nightmare said dismissively. He saw Ink mouth the words repair damage, but ignored it. None of us can do it because of obvious reasons. Ink did not know those obvious reasons, and tentatively mentioned as much. Nightmare sighed and rubbed his forehead. My nature makes me incapable of using healing magic since it partially relies on positive emotions. The others' level of violence are too high for them to use it either. He had never seen Ink look so focused. Nightmare could sense him trying to stifle his excitement. Is there a place to learn repair or heal, those kinds of magic things? Nightmare stared at him. Scanced? Okay. That's a word I don't know. For once. Please don't tell me you think you can go to school. What's a school? Nightmare felt a headache forming. He could not tell if it was because of Ink's joy or Ink's presence. Not something you need to concern yourself with. We have the library. You can read the books there. So mean! So mean! Jesus, I don't go to school. The library was the biggest room yet. Hundreds of shelves filled the area all the way up to the ceiling. Nightmare led Ink to the huge section on magic and left him there. In that section was just a single book on green healing magic. Ink knew that because it was the first thing he searched for, and he searched multiple times just to be sure. As soon as Nightmare mentioned healing magic, Ink knew he had to learn it. He had tried so hard to make his empty white world a better place, but failed. The thought of destroying and hurting felt so wrong, and the thought of fixing and repairing something felt so right. The book on healing magic wasn't a very big one. It was barely thicker than Ink's skeletal hand. He took it off the shelf and flipped past the index to the first page. He read that page, then the next, and onward until suddenly he was out of pages. Ink stared at the inside of the back cover for several moments and flipped back to the pages because surely that could not have been it. That was it. The book only had the basics on green magic and how to use it. He tried not to be disappointed, but let it out anyway because Nightmare could use it. Ink looked at the huge section on magic and looked back at the pathetically thin book. He should move on to the other types, like Nightmare ordered. Even if Ink was useless, he could prove he could follow orders. That didn't involve hurting others and destroying things. Ink flipped the book open again to a passage that had stuck out to him. Magic is often linked to intent and the energy within one's body. This is particularly important for healing green magic. While amiable emotions towards a target can speed up the healing process, ill intent and malice can greatly hinder or even nullify it. No! Like our friend? No?
Oh my god,
like
no! No? Bethel, where are you, no?
That we miss you every single day. Ink read the book a couple more times. He needed to study the other types of magic. Nightmare had ordered it. But Ink wanted to help, to mend, to repair. Something stirred in his soul. He summoned it. Oh. Ink almost forgot his soul was damaged. Ink studied his soul. Spiderweb cracks had spread out from the 10 punctures in the heart, making it take the appearance of broken pottery. Would the library have any books about that? Rather than worry, Ink appreciated the breaks in the whiteness. He'd hated his soul once and wanted it gone, but now he needed it. He checked the descriptions on how to summon magic again and touched his throat. Nightmare told him to study magic, not to practice it. Ink did not want to wait. He had spent too long waiting. He had to try it right now. Ink focused on his soul and felt something. An endless blackness appeared in his mind, and it was not like Nightmare's body or starless night sky. Most might be terrified by the darkness, but Ink was not. He was so relieved it wasn't endless white. The white was empty, but the darkness felt full, like he was surrounded by liquid blackness. It felt like ink. Ink put a hand to his throat, grasped the inky magic, and pulled. Ink felt something shift, like liquid in a glass. After trying and failing to do anything with magic during his training sessions, now Ink's magic responded to him with such ease that he nearly dropped it. He held it in his hand, feeling it, and watched it shimmer into visibility over the bones of his palm. The magic was a black liquid like his blood. For a moment, Ink feared he had somehow pulled his own blood out of his injury, but there was no pain. The black ink-like magic was cool to the touch, at first, but it warmed up in his hand and shifted its hue. The green color still did not look like what was described in the book. It was too dark, like someone had mixed a drop of black paint into it without fully stirring the darkness in. It was also heavy, like it was made from paint and not light. Ink should try to make it more like the description in the book, but he had already done more than he had ever accomplished before. He had to try. Ink gritted his teeth as he pictured what his bone looked like when it was not injured. Sweat trickled down his forehead. A ripple passed over the magic, and its color and consistency transformed again. It looked like the green light it was supposed to be, but it felt like it had physical weight still, like liquid. Was it supposed to be like that? The stinging in Ink's throat dulled, and he let the magic fade. It did not so much fade as it dripped from between his fingers and evaporated into midair. He poked at his neck, but did not feel any pain. A quick check on his reflection in one of the windows showed the slices were gone. Ink shoved down his excitement. He did not have to worry about any positivity because his burst of confidence soon fizzled out. Just because he healed his own injuries did not mean he could heal others. Was healing magic even useful? Nightmare acted like it wasn't. It was dark now. It was late. Very late. He was supposed to look up the other types of magic, too. Ink tried. He really did, since he knew Nightmare would be angry if he disobeyed, and failed to learn what the boss ordered. But Ink kept turning back to the books on healing magic, and then he found a book on parts of a house, and there was a whole section on cookbooks. Yeah, guys, if you didn't already pick this up, FTFO Ink is very autistic coded. I'm not even, joking around here, he's very much autistic coded. Purposely.
Very
Ink
clearly.
learned about houses and castles and cooking, but the information about the attacks and other types of magic, except green, didn't stick in his head. Ink tried to make it stay, but his mind kept wandering back to the other things he had learned. He did not understand. He did so well with the information on green magic, but when he tried to read the other books on magic, his mind often wandered. It did not help that there was so much to see, so many colors and sensations, like the flickering blue flames, the soft pops of the lanterns, and the shifts in the cool air around him. Nightmare's castle had a library. Would other worlds have libraries? Would those worlds have their own libraries with books on green magic? Could he ask someone to get him one of those books? Nightmare did not seem to think green magic was important, but Ink thought it was. He needed to learn how to repair and heal. The question was whether Nightmare would let him. Ink had to be useful, but did green magic have a use? Nightmare did not think so. Nightmare knew better than him. Nightmare would say no, wouldn't he? Ink was so grateful that he was out of the empty whiteness, but now he felt trapped all over again. Ink's instinct proved to be correct. Nightmare was not happy when he struggled to share what little he researched about other types of magic. Ink stood silently under his disapproving gaze and kept his studies on green magic to himself, since he did not want to waste any more of Nightmare's time. Ink would not harm, he would not fight. He was useless, and green magic was useless. He knew Nightmare was questioning his place here. His boss was kind enough not to throw him back there. Ink was sent to clean part of the castle as soon as Nightmare was done with him. He was guided by Killer to a lower, dark room of the castle with a lot of doors with bars on them. This must be a basement. Much to his shock, Killer gave him the basics on how to clean, what chemicals to use along with ones he should never mix. He explained that several chemicals could be toxic. It was unlikely to kill any of them, but it would be irritating to deal with. One of the small rooms had a pile of powdery substance inside. A splatter of brownish red was on the opposite wall between the manacles. Ink finally realized what this place was. The small rooms were cells. The substances were dried blood and monster dust. This was not the basement. It was a dungeon. Ink looked up to see Killer smiling at him. This was another warning, wasn't it? Ink did not need it. He knew what Killer and the others could do. Ink did not say a word. He lowered his head and cleaned up in silence.
That shit was messed up.
As the days passed, Ink remained uncertain of his place in Nightmare's castle, but he slowly settled into a routine. He helped Horror cook, studied attack magic, practiced green magic, struggled to figure out any other aspects of attack magic, failed to use the kind of attack magic the others tried to teach him, trained to fight, as in, he stayed out of range as long as he could, until Killer and Dust got bored and they inevitably slammed Ink to the floor, practiced green magic on himself, researched up on whatever he could so he did not have to ask too many questions, and cleaned around the castle. No parts of the castle were as ominous as the dungeons. It strikes again, guys. Even the training area was preferable, I know that word, to that place. I talked too much game. Other than that, Ink liked cooking with Horror and cleaning the most of his duties. Being in the library lost some of its luster every time he failed to retain the information he had been ordered to study. The former because Horror was nice, and the latter because it gave Ink an excuse to wander around the castle. The only areas he could not enter was Nightmare's room, Killer's room, and a place that Nightmare called a lab. Anywhere else was fair game. The halls, the rooms, the attic, the garden, the roof of the castle, well, that last one caused a bit of trouble because Horror could not find Ink and spent 3 hours searching for him. He even recruited Dust to help, and the two had seemed strangely alarmed when they realized Ink was exploring the outside of one of the towers. Ink could not help but climb tall things whenever he got the chance. The height let him see so much. Ink knew Dust only helped because Nightmare would be annoyed if his investment fell off the roof and died, but he secretly hoped Horror might actually care about him. Maybe. It was also possible Horror only tolerated him because the boss ordered it, like Killer said. In truth, Ink hoped Horror cared, but he did not want to let himself hope. He had to remember how easily he would be abandoned. It was becoming easier to suppress his positive emotions. All he had to do was remember that he would be thrown back there one day, and his joy would dim. The schedule was interrupted before Ink could become used to it. One day, after the middle of the day meal that was called lunch, he was ordered to the entrance hall. Only Dust and Killer were there when he arrived. The former paced back and forth as he muttered to Paps while Killer was checking one of his many knives. Ink did not know why he needed to check them, since most of them were made of magic, but he was not about to ask. Dust noticed Ink's arrival. "You're here. Good. We'll be leaving soon, and by we, I mean everyone but you. You're staying here." Fear choked Ink only for a moment before he calmed down. If they were leaving him, they would leave him in the empty whiteness of his abandoned world. They'd never leave him in Nightmare's castle. Dust was more approachable than Killer, so Ink risked asking a question. "Where are you going?" Dust's eye sockets closed and he smiled sharply. "We're giving a version of Underfell a visit." Killer made his knives vanish with a flick of his wrist. "They think they're tough and love to say it's kill or be killed, but they're all talk. Makes me sick. We like to remind them that they're nothing before we rip their souls to shred." "Remind them?" Dust questioned. "Have we visited this Underfell before? We've attacked so many variants that I've lost track. Are we visiting Red?" "Nah," Killer drawled. "Red is in the Omega timeline now anyway." Ink felt a strange boiling feeling in his soul when they talked about killing like that. He knew exactly what feeling it was, but he kept his thoughts to himself. Even though Nightmare would sense his negativity, he would do his best to be useful to Nightmare. Nightmare had told him what the gang did. Ink knew it when he was recruited. Objecting would not stop them and would only make him even more pathetic to them. He simply did not understand how they could enjoy destruction and intimidation. There were so many places to see, things to do, and people to get to know out there, but instead they were hurting those people in worlds. Why? Ink did not ask. He could not ask. Maybe someday, but not when that question could get him thrown back there. He was not a real member of the gang. He was not their equal. He had no right to speak a word against them. Protesting would bring him nothing but pain. He could not do anything but help them stop. Ink's anger shifted into a quiet and miserable helplessness that reminded him of how he felt there. Horror arrived and lumbered over to Ink. He slipped something into his pocket as he went, and Ink recognized the butterscotch pie Horror had painstakingly baked earlier. Horror had explained that butterscotch pie healed the most out of the magic cooked items they currently had on hand. Ink had researched it a bit during his time in the library before he was distracted by a book filled with maps. One thing Ink remembered from the first book was that items could not heal nearly as much as green magic. Horror approached Ink and put his hand on his skull, patting it. Ink did not know why he did that, but enjoyed the contact anyway, brief as it was. He had realized recently that Nightmare became colder when Ink touched him, so he was trying not to do that lately. That left him with Horror's pets and Killer or Dust grabs when they wanted him to go do something for them. "We're going to be fighting," Horror said lowly. "Underfell will be no problem unless the Star Santas show up. This Underfell has enough negativity that Dream will be lucky to summon a toothpick," Killer mocked. Ink had not heard those names before. No one had mentioned any Star Santas or Dreams, but they sounded important. They must be, if Horror was bringing them up now, right? Horror continued as if Killer had not spoken, and before Ink could weigh the risks of asking. "When Boss summons the portal, I want you to focus on its energy. Recognize the feeling of it. You'll immediately be alerted when we return." Horror put his hands on Ink's shoulders. It was something he tended to do if he really wanted Ink to pay attention. "If you do not recognize the feeling of the portal, hide." Ink had never heard Horror sound so serious. It unsettled him so much that he looked uncertainly to the others for guidance. Killer ignored him like usual, but dust caught his gaze. It's almost impossible for anyone that is not us to get into this world, but almost impossible doesn't mean impossible. Dust lazily stretched his arms above his head and cracked his neck. Anyone that gets in here will want you dead. Or they'll torture you. Fuck! Or they'll torture you for information, Killer added. If they catch you, don't answer their questions or I'll make what's left of you regret it. Got it? Ink had not really considered what others would feel towards the game. He knew the Nightmare Gang hurt people and would have enemies. Like Dream and those Star Sanses, but he never really did think about those enemies wanting to hurt the gang. It really was dangerous out there, huh? Horror was nice. Nightmare was distant, cold, and watchful. Dust was indifferent. Killer wanted to hurt Ink. They were going to go hurt other people. They gave Ink the opportunity to be someone. They were all Ink had. Be careful, Ink whispered. Killer heard him and gave a sharp laugh. How weak do you think we are, brat? Ink had not meant it as an offense. Killer would not care about that, though, so Ink did not bother clarifying. Nightmare appeared, and Horror nudged Ink before stepping up next to their boss. The air in front of Nightmare rippled, and Ink focused on the codes of the magic. Nightmare's portal felt like shadows and darkness, dark and cold to the senses, but soothing in its familiarity. Beyond that portal was a new world. Ink could see what appeared to be another castle through the opening. Ink wanted so badly to run past Nightmare and through that portal. How many new things were in that world? How many people? He wanted to see and experience it all, but he knew he couldn't. He did not have permission. He was useless in a fight. If he went out now, he'd be free at EXP for the first monster that wanted him dead. Nightmare glared at Ink with one cyan eyelight. Stay here. Nightmare and the others stepped through. The portal shut behind them, leaving Ink alone. Panic clawed at his throat, but he reminded himself they would be back. Being alone in the castle would not be so bad. There was plenty to look at in the main hall. Nightmare said stay here, so Ink must have to stay in the exact same spot until they returned, right? Ink was used to waiting and doing nothing. It was making him bored. Yes, it was making him bored. Not terrified, because it reminded him of standing in the empty whiteness, even though there was plenty to look at here. There was a big door, and the lanterns, and the rug, and the ceiling, and the stones. Ink counted a few of them as he hugged himself and rocked in place. Nightmare had ordered him to stay there. He could follow orders, but it was so quiet, and he hated standing around. He stood around so much in the empty whiteness of his abandoned AU. Surely Ink would be more useful if he did something. Ink took a single step, then another. He memorized where he had been standing and took off for the library. He had already read the books on green healing magic a lot of times, but he wanted to check it over again. He picked it up, read through it, and recalled that, there was a book about cooking he wanted to show Horror, and the one about weather patterns, because most worlds had things like rain, thunder, and snow, and that reminded him he needed to study magic still, but it was still hard and he couldn't focus, so he went back to the book about weather, and oh look, there was that map book again. Ink did not realize how much time had passed until he felt a portal open somewhere in the castle. He immediately dropped the book and ran towards the portal. Nightmare would be so upset that he had moved from where he had said. The portal had appeared in a different spot than Nightmare's, so maybe he would not be too mad. Too late, Ink realized the sensations did not match. Nightmare's portal felt like shadows. This one felt like a knife cutting the air. A skeleton stepped through the portal. It was not Nightmare or the others. Ruh-roh! Ruh-roh! Ruh-roh, Raggy. Okay.
Ruh-roh.
Are you okay, Beetle?
What? Yeah.
Is this gonna be the last chapter before you go to bed?
Yeah, probably. Well, mostly.
Okay. Okay. Cross stepped through his portal and slashed the air behind him with his hack knife. It sealed shut, and he gripped the hilt of his blade. Ugh. It was tempting to slash the air, close it, and tear it apart again and again just to release some of the anger and disappointment that burned in his soul. His soul, not X-Kara's. Cross did not know where X-Kara was anymore, and he quite frankly did not give a damn. X-Kara had simply stopped responding one day, and that was that. Good riddance. The manipulative bastard could fade into non-existence for all Cross cared. He would figure out how to revive their world on his own. Cross was not having much luck. Did he purposely come back when the others weren't here? Yes. Cross wasn't in the mood to hear Killer's mocking questions about whether he had found anything this time. He especially was not in the mood to hear any derisive comments on if he had found any snipes or unicorns while searching for the creator. When Cross was first introduced in the multiverse and heard the stories, he thought the mythical creator, or protector, as some labeled them, could fix his world. Now he hated that he wasted years chasing a fantasy. It would not be so bad, except Killer would not let him forget it. He should find new material. Despite his anger, Cross did not hate his teammates. He simply did not want to face them at the moment. Dust would ask, Killer would mock, and Horror would try to comfort in his quiet, watchful way. Nightmare would simply give Cross a look that asked, "Why are you still trying?" Cross would despise him for that if the boss did not let him chase every dead lead he heard of. It did not matter. Cross would face their ridicule, incentive questions eventually, but not right now. He had the castle to himself, and he was going to enjoy it. A soft gasp echoed in the silence of the not empty at all castle. Cross looked up from his knife to see a Sans standing at the top of the grand staircase. The Sans was one of the smallest Cross had ever seen. AUs were the usuals. AUs were the usuals were kids, notwithstanding. Out of those ones he had seen, he was pretty sure only Outer was smaller. That was all the details Cross got before the Sans turned on their heel and took off running the way they came. Cross swore and raced after them. He did not recognize the Sans. Did the gang have prisoners right now? Had one of them escaped? The Sans did not look particularly injured, but it was nearly impossible for one to have stumbled upon Nightmare's castle by accident. Had Core Frisk finally cracked the code, and had the council sent someone in to snoop while the gang was away? Cross grimaced and quickened his stride. The Sans did not get lost in the winding halls of the castle. In fact, they started making a roundabout way back towards the front entrance hall. The Sans got outside. Cross could lose them. It was almost like the Sans knew how to get around. That made it all the more important to catch the intruder. "Stop!" Cross roared. To his surprise, the Sans did. They stopped so quickly, in fact, that Cross slammed into them from behind, and they both fell forward. This would not have been a problem if the two of them were not back near the long flight of the grand staircase that headed down. Cross was a formal royal guard. He was part of the dreaded X-Event. He was a member of the feared Nightmare gang. His body was a weapon in of itself, and he was in complete mastery of it. Cross graciously fell down the stairs with the other Sans, both tumbling and rolling as they went. They landed in dazed heaps at the bottom, and Cross's skull bounced off the floor. Something definitely cracked. The smaller Sans fell over him before they hit the floor. Unlike Cross, they made no sound of pain when they stopped rolling. They did not move at all. Swallowing the sudden lump in his throat, Cross pushed himself up and checked, but the Sans wasn't dusting. He took the opportunity to actually check the trespasser. It's just the same stuff.
Except...
Medic healer. In training? Check. Nobody important. Just wants to help. A medic? That was not a role that Cross had ever heard of. This ink must be powerful to hide his data, but he made a mistake in his story, where he'd been interrupted when he was trying to come up with a cover to hide his true identity. Ink stirred and raised his head. His eyelight focused on Cross as he gasped quietly. "You're hurt." Cross grabbed him and pinned him to the floor, putting his knife to Ink's throat. Ink stopped moving, at all. His sudden stillness was unnatural. It was as though someone had pressed pause on a movie. Only his eyelids were animated as they shrank to terrified pinpricks. Cross kept his blade close enough to nick the bone. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Ink remained silent. "Answer me! How did you get into the castle?" Silence. If Ink had not just spoken, Cross would have thought he was incapable. Unfortunately for him, Cross knew better. "Who sent you?" Cross snarled. "Was it the council? Core? Was it Dream?" Ink did not say a word. Cross felt him begin to tremble beneath him. He did not feel bad. Not mentally, at least. His skull definitely had a small crack in it, and there were a couple blurry spots in his vision. No one could accidentally walk into Nightmare's castle. This Ink was a trespasser, or an escaped prisoner. Either way, Cross should keep him for interrogation. But without knowing his true data and abilities, it was too much of a risk to try and likely fail to capture him, to contain him. Anyone who could manipulate codes and hide their stats was too much of a risk. Cross knew what he had to do, even if he hated it. There was no point in mercy. "I'm sorry," Cross said quietly. Ink's eye sockets widened in terror, but he did not say a word. Make a sound! Damn it!
Damn it!
That portal opened, and the Nightmare gang stepped through. Dust and Killer's laughter about some underfelt undying, and Papyrus fell silent as they caught sight of Ink and Cross. Nightmare froze. Even his tentacles went still. Horror vanished. It was rare to see him teleport, especially since it took more energy to use a shortcut in a world that was not their own. He reappeared next to Cross, and the next thing he knew, he was shoved away from Ink. Cross landed hard, and his knife skidded across the stone floor until it hit the wall. Thankfully, the hilt hit first, and not the blade. Nightmare would be pissed if they lost another wall to an accident. He looked up to see Horror staring back with empty eye sockets. His sharp teeth bared into a snarl as he stood over Ink. To keep him from fleeing? No, that was not right. Horror looked to be shielding Ink. What? Cross's confused thoughts were interrupted when Ink pushed himself up to his knees. He did not try to run or flee, not even as Nightmare approached, not even when Nightmare reached for him with his tentacles. Cross suppressed a flinch and averted his gaze. Despite Ink being an enemy, he did not want to see him turn to dust. After a few seconds, there was no screams or sounds of fallen dust. Cross looked up to see Ink was clinging to one of Nightmare's tentacles. He was touching Nightmare and not dying. What? Killer, Nightmare said in a low, ominous tone. Did I or did I not order you to tell Cross about our newest member? Killer scratched at his cheekbone and chuckled. You might have given that kind of order, boss. God damn it. Killer, you always get me fucking going. Ah! Nightmare exhaled slowly and closed his eye sockets. His aura darkened, but Ink, who was still holding on to him, did not even flinch. What? Why didn't you tell Cross I recruited you, Ink? That's Cross? Oh. Ink studied Cross for a moment, then looked away to smile tentatively at the guardian negativity. I didn't know it was Cross, so I didn't answer any questions, just like Killer said. Killer made a coughing sound. Nightmare's tentacles twitched like a snake's tongue sensing prey. I see. Or properly introduce Ink to Cross. Killer with me. Somebody's in trouble, Dust muttered. Killer made a rude gesture in his direction before he followed Nightmare out. Ink watched them go and made as if to follow, but Horror stopped him by wrapping an arm around his shoulders. Killer will be fine. Horror gestured for Cross to come closer, but kept Ink close to his side as he eyed Cross from the corner of his sockets. Cross scowled right back at him. It was not his fault that Killer forgot to inform him they had a new recruit in the castle. Horror had no right to judge. Ink, this is Cross, one of ours. He's not usually this stab-happy. Cross, this is Ink, our new recruit. He's not a fighter. Yeah, I saw, Cross muttered. Now that the battle was over, Gil prodded at his soul and conscience. He had almost killed their new recruit, their apparent medic at that. Cross tried to convince himself that he was upset because Nightmare would throw a fit about the wasted resource, but not that he was that good at But he was not that good at fooling himself. He needed to get out into his room before the others noticed. It's nice to meet you, Cross, Ink said in a voice that was barely audible. He spoke quietly, not because he was afraid, Cross realized, because that must be his natural volume. Some part of him wondered how anyone could even hear Ink. If there were many noises in the background, they'd easily drown him out. But he was too busy fighting his own guilt to think much of it. There was no way that Ink was that calm. Cross had chased him down and threatened him in the place he probably had been told was safe. Cross watched Ink closely and made sure not to blink, certain his eye sockets had turned black. Eventually, Ink started to shiver and dropped his gaze to the floor. Cross's smirk was bitter. He knew it. Ink did not seem to realize he'd been caught. You're still hurt. I'm fine, Cross growled. I'll sleep it off. For some reason, Ink did not quail under his glare and backed down. I don't think that's good. Hey, Cross, Dust interrupted. How's your mission? Did you find anything this time? He seemed genuinely curious. Cross knew better. Did he really, though? Because he thought he knew better when he almost murdered their medic. Screw off, Dust, Cross snarled. He took the excuse and stormed out. Ink tried to follow him, but Horror grabbed his arm and shook his head. Cross gritted his teeth and pretended it was because of the pain in his skull. The green magic would not work anyway. Cross had tried to murder their medic, and he would suffer for it. If not now, then when the magic foods were not enough and he desperately needed to be healed with magic. Ink was probably terrified of him. That terror would prevent green magic from taking effect. And Cross only had himself to blame for his own misfortune. Story of his life. That's chapter 3!
Yeah, chapter 3!
Beetle is, dying, guys, and my throat low-key is, and I can't read another chapter by myself. I will, start even...
I don't know why, I don't know how we decided, 5 chapters. We'll totally be able to do that.
Well, I think we could if we didn't do it at, 2 a.m.
True. It is 2:52 for me.
Okay, wait, I'm gonna try to catch up. So there's someone in chat that's never read this fic before. That's interesting.
Oh, you should totally read it.
Yeah,
It's
or
so
stick
good.
around for our chapter readings.
And even if you do read it or have read it, you should still stick around and listen to us.
Yeah.
Anyway. I feel like watching or reading a piece of media at least twice always it's the best. It's the best reading it for a second time. Like, sure, the first time you're like, you get all the surprises and the first feelings, but the second time you could really like take it in and like
Roseverse Killer and FTFO Inc. would be friends for being so bullied by the others. Oh my god. Who can curl up the hardest?
I almost started laughing
I'm
at that.
just like you're just like me. Oh, they're both so bullied. Oh my god. People who have read chapter 4, they know. I like how like the chat just like reawoken when Cross came in.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, ah,
It's
Cross!
the boy! The Oreo guy!
Cross!
Cookies and cream!
Cookies and cream. I just love listening to podfics. I have VAs to do so. I would have to get more, but I have people that I could do that. But there's so many characters in FTFO that I'm like almost frightened to do so. I always wanted to though. My first line of what I need to do is, finishing the actual analysis video.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was really fun.
I enjoyed it. You do have a lovely reading voice.
But we awake when Cross. Was everyone just like super relaxed? Because that's the vibe I got.
I think so. I was. I say as if I'm not like zoning out right now. Yeah, I was relaxed.
Everyone says that my voice when I'm reading is like really like relaxing, but then I'm like, no, it's not.
It is. It is. There's a tone of voice you use. It's like the reading voice, the narrator voice.
Wait, pause. You're gonna look for more VAs. You said, we don't have a horror VA that would be actually like as a deep voice. I don't think Art can go that deep. I think he can, but I would rather him voice Nightmare.
True.
So
Art
I would
is
have
Nightmare.
I would have to ask KJ if he has any connections, or I would have to put like a small casting call if I wanted to do that. But I'm not entirely sure I want to.
Don't worry, guys. I'll be Horror Sans. Can't you tell? From my incredibly deep voice.
Your Dakota would come out.
I've been fighting it. I fought it when I was trying to read. I don't want to be bullied, Rosa. I should have just done voice.
You're crazy. I'm just like really insecure about it because I've always thought I had a lisp, like a stutter. But then people are like, "No, you fucking don't," and I'm like, "But like, I feel like I do."
It's okay.
I feel like I do.
Car. Oh, I don't think you have like a terrible like lisp or stutter. Like lisp wise, like there are certain words I hear, I'm like, oh yeah, I can hear it, but it's not like obvious. You know what I'm saying?
When I'm talking, people can hear it, but then like when I'm reading, they can finally see what I mean. Which I'm like, thank God you can finally see what I'm talking about. But then you're still doubting me.
I'm still
Okay. What was I gonna say for like a final thing? Yes, that analysis video is still being worked on. Obviously, it's gonna take a lot longer because I'm trying to figure out a way to like shorten it. That's not gonna be like 5 hours. Because FTFO is 50 chapters. It is long, and we just read 3 chapters only, and that was long. That's a 2-hour stream.
Yeah.
So like, it can be a little bit insane. It can be a lot, and so having to like summarize all the different plot points, because FTFO ties it all in perfectly, but there are so many like plot point threads that it's impossible to just do a simple summary without missing all the beats. So I would have to actually do like chapter by chapter summaries, but it takes a little bit.
Have you thought of like maybe doing it like arc by arc? But also
there's too many arcs to do that. There's just
I mean like one video per arc, Or like a certain group of chapters.
Maybe.
And
And
you
then
don't
like
have to do it in a single
and then
video.
find it when I'm done.
Yeah, like a playlist or something. The entire analysis. All parts.
Yeah, all parts. It'd be like
All
5
parts.
hours. I feel like I should just do it as one though, and just like suck it up and just make it super long because I'm gonna have more fun with that, and I don't have to restrict myself.
Hey, shit. Shit.
Because I have so many connections. I've mentioned foreshadowing like in like these 3 chapters.
Yes.
But let me pull out my notes actually, since I've read through this chapter, so I can actually like the people here will know like what's happening, so I can actually say like an example of some of my notes.
Yeah.
Give me a sec. I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, no. I'm honestly, this is the second time I've ever read this. It's hard for me to go back and reread or rewatch stuff, even if I really like it. So rereading this is like really cool because I'm like looking at, I'm like, oh my god, I forgot this happened. Like the small little things, small little things.
Mm-hmm.
Do whatever you enjoy, for real, for real, for real, for real.
One thing I pointed out a lot is that Ink didn't really want to like actually die because he hated himself. He just wanted his pain to stop, which is really a lot of like the real reason why people are like wanting to not alive, because whatever painful moment they're going through their lives, they just want it to end, but there's always hope around the other end of the tunnel. And like that's the first chapter where you get something like that. And it's a beautiful message when you look into it. And this goes for the chat too. You know, this whole fic is about, even though you want the pain to stop and you're in a horrible situation, there's always hope at the other end of the tunnel. And there's always going to be like a positive and like a good day one day that might keep you alive a little longer. Wanting to go just because you are in a bad spot right now and you want the pain to stop is not truly wanting to leave Earth. You just want to be happier. And you'll get there. And Ink gets there. So I really like that. I also talked about how intimidating and how he constantly describes Nightmare as like super tall, even though Nightmare is really not that tall in this fic. He just like is so intimidating to him that it's like
it makes him tall.
In comparison to anything, he's super, just so much. Also, just what he stands for. And also, Ink's first color that he sees is Nightmare's highlight. You can tell in the first 3 chapters that the majority of FTFO is centered around Ink and Nightmare. God, it's so sad. I can't talk about it right now because of spoilers for later. I don't want to spoil it to chat. But it does connect to later chapters. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Also, the first time someone actually, like, speaks to him, like Ink, it's someone looking down at him and just, like, belittling him. The first words he ever hears are someone just thinking he's weak. Let that one sink in.
Made you cry like 3 times. So real! I made the mistake of reading this fic while also listening to, like, dark classical music. And there was, like, a certain, I forgot what chapter, but I think it was in, like, the 30s mark. Where this, like, it was the perfect music that matched the fic so bad that I had to, like, pause. I had to pause and be like, oh my god. My heart rate.
It's so sad. I have, like, videos on my TikTok of me, like, actually crying over FTFO chapter updates. It's crazy. But, Beetle's fading. I can tell, because I know them. And we need to end stream because of that. But this was really fun. We actually got a lot more viewers than we usually do when we even have KJ here. Like,
so
people
cool.
really liked this.
Yeah!
People really like this, and if we start doing it, like, at a decent time during the day, with, like, other VA friends, I feel like it would be, like, really cool.
It would be really cool.
So yeah, thank you for sticking around. I'm glad you guys liked this. It makes me want to do it some more. And also, I hope this inspires you to read the fic, because it would make my job easier in the analysis video if a lot more of my followers read it and knows what's going on. Y'all need sleep. I always need sleep, but it's okay. You can hear my voice fading because I read so much. You can
Everyone's
you
sleeping.
can end stream, Beetle. Love you
We're in
guys.
stream. Goodbye,
Thanks
guys.
for joining.
Have a
Have
nice
a
night,
good
morning.
night.